Okay, let's jump straight into today's explainer, because we are diving into a legendary culinary catastrophe. We're looking at a fascinating story set in the Balkan village of Gornja Magla. Now, this is a place that has survived empires, wars, and historical upheavals, with the kind of philosophical resilience you only get from people who know that one thing is absolutely eternal: Sarma. Specifically, Baba Milena Nikolić's stuffed cabbage rolls. Her recipe is so heavily revered, it was rumored to have brought tears to the eyes of a visiting bishop. But as you'll see in the story we're exploring today, this celebrated dish suddenly becomes the center of a massive, village-wide scandal.
We have to start with a shocking number: 6. That is the exact number of people struck down by severe food poisoning right before the village's sacred Slava celebration. It's February, and the Nikolić household has been in this state of controlled chaos, prepping for a massive feast where they're expecting up to 150 guests. So the family gathers to do the traditional pre-feast tasting, and within an hour, 6 people, including Baba Milena herself, are violently ill. The local doctor arrives, takes a look, and diagnoses bacterial food poisoning. But here's the thing: in a kitchen that has been flawlessly run for 60 years, a simple accident seemed entirely impossible to the proud cook.
Because her cabbage rolls had been utterly flawless for 6 decades, Baba Milena immediately assumed this disaster had to be an act of deliberate sabotage. I mean, someone, she deduced, must have infiltrated her kitchen to ruin her reputation on literally the most important religious day of the year. So, wielding her wooden spoon like a scepter, she outright rejects the doctor's theory of a natural bacterial accident. No way. She demands an official police investigation right then and there to unmask this culinary assassin.
Part 1. Sabotage, Suspects, and Chickens.
Enter Inspector Dragan, a village policeman whose investigative methods are, well, incredibly creative. If we look at his suspect board, it's wild. It juxtaposes a 4-decade bitter human rivalry with a literal chicken. First up, we have Sofija Petrović. She is Baba Milena's arch-nemesis, a rivalry dating all the way back to a 1987 church festival where Milena's Sarma took first place. Sofija openly admits she wants Milena to fail, but she's got a rock-solid alibi. She was organizing the storage room with the village priest. Next on the list is Marko, the city-dwelling grandson who is helping out in the kitchen. But Dragan? Dragan is immediately drawn to suspect number 2, a local speckled hen. Yes, you heard that right. He genuinely suspects this free-range bird might have been trained by a human rival to act as an espionage agent and contaminate the kitchen.
Inspector Dragan was absolutely convinced that this speckled hen was acting as a trained vector for bacterial contamination. He was so sure of it, he even writes this quote down in his notebook as an official police saying, "Coincidence is just causation we haven't proven yet." He had actually seen this exact same speckled hen at the sites of several other village mishaps, like this one stolen church wine incident. So while the village priest and the doctor are desperately trying to explain that, hey, chickens just wander around villages looking for food, Dragan insists that the hen's presence near the open kitchen door was a highly calculated act of sabotage.
Part 2. The Scene of the Crime. Okay, looking past the wild chicken conspiracies, the real culprit actually lies in the high-pressure chaos of a Slava preparation. Under immense pressure and a constant barrage of shouting from his grandmother, Marko was tasked with the prep work. At 8 a.m., he's grinding fresh meat. At 9 a.m., he chops onions on this ancient, heavily scarred wooden cutting board. And then at 9:30 a.m., he uses that exact same large wooden board to chop raw meat for the sauce. This timeline, right here, is the smoking gun of our entire story.
Part 3. The true culprit revealed. So, there was no grand conspiracy, it was just Marko. He eventually breaks down and admits that, in the absolute chaos of the kitchen, he wiped that scarred wooden cutting board with a mere damp cloth between chopping the raw meat and the onions, instead of, washing it properly. This is the absolute textbook definition of cross-contamination. Harmful bacteria from the fresh raw meat sank right down into the deep grooves of that old wooden board and transferred directly into the rest of the ingredients. Marko thinks he might have even forgotten to wash his hands thoroughly between tasks. It wasn't sabotage, it was just a classic mundane food safety failure.
Part 4. A lesson in food safety.
Facing his grandmother's wrath and her terrifying wooden spoon, Marko prepares for the absolute worst. But instead of violence, he gets subjected to a rigorous kitchen rehabilitation. We see a really clear clash here between Marko's careless city shortcuts and Baba Milena's ironclad village hygiene rules. Ironically, Marko actually knows the modern rules of food safety. He literally has color-coded cutting boards back in his city apartment, but when he was thrown into the traditional, high-stress village kitchen, he just abandoned strict hygiene for speed, assuming a quick wipe with the damp rag would be enough. Baba Milena wasn't having it. She immediately implements the fortified war room protocol for the second batch: strictly separate labeled cutting boards, vigorous scrubbing, and absolute, unwavering focus.
To earn his kitchen redemption, Marko had to execute a strict, non-negotiable protocol. First, wash hands with soap and hot water for at least 20 seconds. Second, never, ever share cutting boards or knives between raw meat and vegetables without a thorough wash. And always ensure meat reaches a safe internal temperature of 75 degrees Celsius. It's a fantastic reminder for all of us that no matter how legendary your recipe is, skipping these fundamental steps can turn a highly anticipated feast into a total disaster.
Part 5, Redemption and the Slava.
Back at his desk, Inspector Dragan reluctantly filed his official report. He confirms human error, cross-contamination by Marko, and totally clears the case of deliberate human sabotage. The case is closed as accidental negligence. However, what's incredibly funny, and just so true to his character, is that he officially keeps his chicken conspiracy file open. Just in case the speckled hen decides to strike again. Meanwhile, under hawk-like supervision from his grandmother, Marko successfully crafted a second, perfectly safe batch of sarma just in the nick of time for the 150 guests. The celebration that evening was a massive success. Even Sofija Petrović, the arch-rival, showed up with her own dish, and the two women actually shared a rare moment of grudging respect. Baba Milena's quote from that night, "Perfect is for God, we achieve acceptable, and that's enough," shows some really incredible growth. This whole story proves that communities survive not just through tradition and good food, but through the willingness to forgive family mistakes and just move forward together.
So the next time you're prepping dinner, I want you to ask yourself honestly, are your kitchen habits a crime waiting to happen? Would your cutting board hygiene survive Inspector Dragan's scrutiny, or worse, Baba Milena's wooden spoon? Remember, it only takes one rushed wipe of a cutting board to ruin an entire feast. Do yourself a favor. Take those extra 20 seconds.